By the end of this heart rate challenge, Jess was gloating so hard, her facial expression looked like she was sucking on all Candyman Sean's lemon sherbets in one go. This episode wasn't about the girls fighting over Ronnie, Kieran, Joey, Will, etc. It was about girls fighting between themselves for power and status, especially Harriet and Jess, with Jess clearly believing the way that her gyrations with a whip and the use of her catchphrase, which I will edit, you effing wish, raised Ronnie's heart rate faster and gave her the revenge that she needed to restore her position as top alpha in the girls' group. We had this idyllic opening scene with all of the coupled up couples suddenly lying or sitting together à deux, performing exaggerated acts of soothing and calming rituals, stroking one another, saying why they're so well suited together. And you just knew that something big was going to kick off, which was the heart rate challenge. And you knew it was going to be a wrecking ball to all the established relationships. Harriet squawked, "Don't do anything stupid" to Ronnie as the game was announced, but that was obviously read by him as an order to be as stupid as possible because he's a man who's turned not giving an F into an art form. As the girls sucked fingers, dry hump, gyrated over the guys, Joey and Kieran very suspiciously began to show early guilt and inner anxiety by kind of faking, "Oh, I'm having a heart attack. Oh, my heart rate's so high," when their partner was dancing with them. And that looked like they were trying to cheat the results before the real ones were announced. A sure sign of guilt. So Harriet and Jess, Harriet kept her performance relatively dry. I mean, she saved her show-stopping splits till the end. She was a polite distance from the guys. But that unfortunately left it clear for Jess to wreak her long-brewing revenge on Harriet by throwing everything that she had and something directly at Ronnie. Dressed as a dominatrix, complete with a small whip, she licked her tongue up the length of Ronnie's neck and literally chewed on his ear as she whispered her mating call. And this is one we heard a lot of: "You effing wish," which Ronnie adored so much he repeated it to his mates before echoing it back into Jess's ear as he gyrated over Jess during the boys' session. So that was a sure mating call. It was like catnip to Ronnie. And the way that the pair repeated it to and fro as banter actually led to the toe-curling scene when it was announced, of course, that his heart rate was most increased by Jess. Harriet then chewed on a fingernail. This is an act of self-attack. It implies frustration, a suppressed desire to fight somebody else, but because she couldn't, she turned it into self-attack. That's when we start biting our nails. And Jess sat gloating about her win over Harriet, looking strictly at Ronnie to communicate, put Harriet completely out of the equation. And she did this really exaggerated, nose-wrinkled, knowing smile, adding he's only human to try and crush Harriet's ego and her heart underfoot. Jesse's dour sounding for someone who can't dance, he did all right, was also Jess stamping her ownership and authority all over Ronnie, who Harriet had been fangirling about, saying how wonderful he was. Jess also uses this index finger. She does it all the time, but she was waggling it at Ronnie like a little whip that she was cracking, signaling a desire for authority, or a will for a desire for authority over him. When it was announced that Ronnie had increased Jess's heart rate the most, her smugness and gloating reached an absolute peak. Again, keeping her attention solely on Ronnie, she placed both sets of fingers to either side of her nose in a power steeple to show she was back in control again, and even giggled coyly like, "Oh shucks, I didn't know that was going to happen." Yeah, right. Harriet's raised chin and the upward curl of her top lip was the moment between these two women. That was the moment that Harriet produced a snarl, and that signaled the fight between them has just begun in earnest. Kieran and Nicole, their challenge seems to have triggered some surprisingly high levels of suppressed anger, resentment, paranoia from Nicole, who'd been touting Kieran as the perfect man right up to the point that she discovered he'd also been a perfect man to some 120 other women. Open warfare broke out here, but her preempting signals of erupting anger suggested that she saw the problem coming way before it was announced that Kieran's heart rate was raised, of course, by the wonderful Grace. Her head got lowered into her neck, her eyes stare straight ahead. She did a pursed mouth slew, which is a sign of judgmental fury. Her long cut-off eye blink showed total frustration as her, again, effing shock prompted an open verbal argument with Kieran. But we also got some hidden rifts that I'm slightly worried about, things that people might have missed, and particularly with Mimi and Aya. They're being shown as an ideal, to a certain extent, settled couple right now. But their early chat on compatibility last night, it was unconvincing to me because they both did it facing the camera. Now, if you're talking about how wonderful you both are together, how compatible, etc., you would normally do it face to face so you can read one another's signs and judge whether they mean it or not. But actually, what we got here was them facing, and that meant that Mimi's rather cool facial expression was hidden from Io. When Io danced for Mimi, she made all the right appreciative noises, but as he leaned in over her to plant a passionate kiss on her mouth, her back kind of arched and she leant away over the back of the seat. And to me, that looked as though she was actually trying to escape from him. So Mimi's a very cool girl. She's very intelligent. She's been looking emotionally deflated recently. She seems to sense that she shouldn't maybe be investing too much in IO. And given the brutal way this series looks aimed at wrecking any growing relationship, she might actually be right to self-protect. She feigned surprise when told her heart rate was raised most by Connor, who's a really lovely guy. But she probably senses she's next for love triangle. And she looks like she's trying to put a protective ring around both her heart and her dignity. Those other idyllic lovers, Joey and Grace. I mean, if Joey really thought that he'd found the one in there in Grace, he would now pack both their cases and leave the villa, because it's clear that the producers want to pull the wings off their romance. Joey's hemorrhaging status in there and his Burger King outfit for this challenge didn't really help the brand. A new war was sparked when Joey's heart rate was increased the most by Nicole. Any suggestion of either Nicole or Grace acting like girls and being friendly and just brushing over it was smashed when we see Nicole's smugly pursed lips forming a crowing gesture prompted by this win over Grace. Grace's response suggested anger at Nicole rather than Joey. Her lips clamped and pursed as her body bristled, and her minor slay comment sounded like a battle cry for yet another war to break out.